think, and obviously people should read into the details, and I want to ask you about some other specific races. But what I'm really interested in asking you about is, like, is it your sense that these people at the DCCC, I mean, the stuff that resonated for me, it was actually Zephyr Teachout's comments, and maybe I'm conflating what she said on Twitter about the piece or within the piece, but her basic argument was like, look, the DCCC does not have the resources to make a determination as to what's going on in these primary races. And there's a quality of this that, like, reminds me of, frankly, of my experience in writing sitcoms. You've got a bunch of people executives who are development executives. They don't know how to make a hit show. Nobody does. It's really, you just don't know. There's just too many factors. So they put their emphasis, the most important aspect of the process becomes the only one that they can intervene in any way. So in sitcoms, you got into this very sort of stale writing type of situation where you didn't need to write it as tightly as it did, but it was the only thing that these executives could actually control and measure in some way. And it seems to me, if you're the deep CCC, you're sitting back in Washington, and the only thing that you can measure is cash and sort of like the least amount of effort expended, some type of unit of like every dollar that comes with only a certain amount of effort, right? And like that becomes the most important metric because it's the only one that actually empowers you sitting in Washington. I mean, as opposed to they have some type of ideological framework. Now, there may be a relationship between those two things. I think there is. But in the context of this, it just sounds like bad practice.
Right. And Zephyr, I believe, also thinks that there is some ideology underlying it, but you're right about her point. She's saying, forget about the ideology for a second. Just look at it from a pure structural competence perspective. They don't have enough. They have a couple people looking at the entire Midwest. They have a couple people looking at the entire South. A couple staffers looking at the Northeast. How are a handful of people who have lots of other stuff to do? They have press releases to write about what's going on in Congress at the moment and how they're going to take advantage of that. They have their own fundraising that they're doing for the organization more broadly. They've got tons of stuff going on. They have a tiny amount of energy that they can put into who is the better candidate in Minnesota's 2nd district. And they look and they say, well, Angie Craig raised $5 million. She almost won in 2016. She only lost by 7,000 votes. She wants to run again. Let's do it. And check the box and move on to your next task. And Zephyr's point is that kind of investment in the process is just going to it's going to make mistakes. You're not going to make the right calls. You would need many times more the amount of resources, and you still, because it's so complex, who knows who the best candidate is necessarily going to be. That's why we are supposed to have elections.
Right.